Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Monday. It's June 26th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And as you can see, looking at the daily chart, we made those two legs up, and we turned down. I kind of guesstimated this, but it turned out to be right, and we pretty much had two legs back to the midline. I was my first target would be the midline, and we'll see. We may push right on through and head on down to this trend line here, and we might even push on through that and head on down to the midline. We will have to see. Um, but that was my minimum target. My first target was that midline, and we pretty much have met that now. So still closed down for the most part. It was really kind of a range day, but we closed on the very lows of the range. So uh, we did close lower today, much lower than the previous day. So Friday. But anyway, there it is on the daily chart. Let's flip over to the 2,000 tick chart, and you can see it here. I'll back out a little bit. We'll flip over to the 2,000 tick chart and see what it looks like, and go through the trades and call it a day. But let's flip over to the other chart. Okay, you can see the range here. We did spend the afternoon in the lower half. We couldn't even get back to the midline. So that's giving you, and you can see we kind of pushed lower a few times here and failed before we pushed even lower. And now the lower end is still acting as resistance. So we could go lower. We'll have to see. But overall, it's still a range day that closed on its lows. And there it is. So there's a little bit of a spike in a channel here. I don't know that the bigger blue one gives you much of a look at anything, but it's there. You might have even drawn it from up here. You might could have gotten even. It just doesn't fit from there. I guess you could say, okay, if you draw it from there, we had a break and two legs, and if you draw it from here like I did, um, which it still seems to fit, you got a break here, and you didn't quite make a new low because of the range until over here. So you still kind of get to the same place, and that's why you really need these shorter term trend channels to really trade this properly. So just keep that in mind. Um, Other than that, this bigger dark blue channel just doesn't help you a whole lot. So it's a range day, and you got to be real careful how you trade it. But anyway, let's zoom in, go through the trades, and wrap up our Monday here. 7 o'clock came just as we're making this high, I believe, here, kind of pushing up here. And we get a failed breakout because we made a new high. Now, when I say a new high, notice how this high is higher than that one and that one. If it would have came up here and just made an equal high or even slightly lower and give you that big bearish bar, then maybe you go short. But when it breaks out and fails, then you got to say, okay, are we done yet? We do have a break and a new high, but sometimes we get two legs, and so there comes the next leg. And so again, it makes another new high. So even should I go short there or should I wait? Always the best rule of thumb is to wait for a lower high, like right here, and you take that one. And the only reason I didn't like this one, or the reason I made it green instead of red, is because it closes outside the support resistance and it's still acting as resistance. So it may not push through there. If it does, it'll probably move on and give you a scalp because most breakouts fail, even if only momentarily. And you can see here, this one failed momentarily and then reversed and went higher. But we came from the highs to the lows and made a double bottom, and we're kind of back in the middle. So you would expect that we'd probably push on up to a new high here. So that's where your expectations would be. But until you get something that's going that way, you can't get on with it. And there's no entry here to get long with this, and it goes all the way up. You just really don't get a chance to enter. And then next thing you know, it's going sideways, and it looks like a range day, and then you get a failed breakout. Once again, I probably, you may not be afraid to take that one on since it's mostly sideways here too, but you're better off to wait on the lower high, which comes here. Now, normally you couldn't pick a lower. Basically, there's a 2-bar matching high there, so that's the same thing as a new high. Even though it doesn't break higher, you can treat that like a new high. uh, big bearish bar. So you can go short right there on the lower high, and that turns out to be a pretty good move. And then it bounces here and comes back and gives you uh, a reversal basically. I don't know if I would wait. We've been going back and forth with no problems there. So you're probably okay going long above that anyway, but I liked it because it broke lower first and turned up, and you got to trade it as an engulfing bar. I like trading that on the engulfing bar, but you could still go long there since every time we've pretty much turned up and down, it's gone back through the midline. So I think you got enough proof there that, hey, we're probably going at least back to the high, and we could go higher because this thing's still got some momentum left, or otherwise we'd already sold off. And when it can't make it this time, you can see the buyers finally give up and the sellers take over. It still takes a little bit of pushing to get through this support right here. And I didn't measure that. It's probably a measured move. I didn't draw the measured move on this a little smaller range, but I'm guessing that's it. And you can see it pretty much is. Um, but you really have a one, you made a bottom, you go higher, come back, you make another bottom. So you got a triple test there, and then you came back and tested again with another good bar. We've been bouncing there every time. I like going long there. You're just trying to get a scalp. You may not get anything more than that, but as long as you got room to scalp out, you're okay to take that trade. And then it turns down again, and this time it pushes through, and it just kind of drops like a rock here. No other real good trades in here. You might say this is a failure, but it's too far from the EMA. The midline held there. It didn't even really get back to the trend line. So then you got to go short at the very low of a move. I don't ever like to do that. So it's not a good setup. And then it reverses. We don't get it. We get a break and eventually get a new low, but it gets a pretty good rally here before it turns back down. And all that buying comes back in. Um, and you just can't enter in that real tight congestion like that. It gets a nice move here. And then same thing. It drops on down. It actually goes much more than a measured move, and it's just we're just stuck in congestion here. I don't see any good setups there on any of those. There's not room to scalp out. And if you draw this one, you pretty much get the same thing. It breaks out, comes back, and I don't see anything there I like. This one's tempting if it had been a better signal bar. If you got a good signal bar there, maybe you take that trade right at the midline after a break and new high on this green channel. I'd really probably want to see a lower high there just to be sure, because this trend line is not really confirmed yet. Um, it looks good with the midline and all, but you can't be 100% sure. And of course, it runs back down. You get the little failed breakout, and you get a first entry short. You get a second entry short. And so this looks like if it breaks higher here, you got a failure and probably a continuation back up. At least we're coming off the low of the range, so we might already go all the way back to the highs or at least the midline. But most likely you're at least headed here. And notice it comes back and makes one more push to the low before it comes back and tests these highs again. So once it gets in here, this is really just sideways, and it's really hard to know what prices are doing. They're bouncing here, but they're turning down here. You probably should draw you another range across here just so you can more easily see it. It's probably like that, and it's a little higher here, like so. And there it is. And you can see that range. So there's a couple of bounces here. I didn't mark these. This one is a possibility. This one is just right into the EMA, which you don't care too much about the EMA when you're in a range, but there's a downtrend going on here too. So this one worries me a little bit. This one, there's still not enough room to get out, and you see what happens. It turns back down, but it does go higher. You definitely got a triple test there by this one, because you can say 1, 2, 3, where here you just kind of have a little double bottom. So when you bounce there again, I'm more apt to take that one. Runs up, makes a few highs, and notice how we made a 1, 2, at least a triple test with a big bearish bar. I like going short there. Then you get a lower high. The key is, do you have enough room before this support here? It's close. You might let it break lower and then drop a limit order in, which it would have come back and filled you a tick or two back into this bar. It just gives you a little more room. It doesn't matter. It works either way, but always try to play it the most conservative, smart way you can. Don't take any risks you don't have to. And it just keeps chopping lower until it breaks down here and finds support right down here again at this blue line. And this thing actually goes higher, comes back and breaks lower, makes a double bottom, fails, turns up. Look how bullish that bar is. If you got room back to that EMA, take that trade. This thing could rocket out of here, but at the very least, it's probably going to come back to that EMA there. And this thing does. It just keeps going. That's probably one of the better moves of the day. And you'd probably catch a runner on that. And then it's just chopping around again. It's just too tight. I don't see anything, that I'd want. I mean, it is a failed break out of this range, just like this is. And actually, this range here, you probably could just say, okay, this range expanded and drag it on down like so. And so this would just be failed breakouts up here, but I don't see anything that makes me want to go short up here. And so it takes you into 230, and then we sold off and finally made a new low on the blue channel. And so that's kind of how I saw it. This is where it gets harder trading in here. The only way to trade this is to buy the lows, sell the highs. And at this point, this was still kind of coming off the low after a failed breakout. But once you got the support established, then you only want to buy the support and you only want to sell the resistance, and you got to be real careful about what's in the middle. Not saying that you won't ever see a trade in the middle, but most of the time you're going to get burned if you try and enter in there. So I've got a lot of questions about range trading lately, and it's pretty simple. Don't really, all you want to do once you're in a range is you want to buy the lows and sell the highs. Now, if it's a big enough range like this and you get a good trend from one side to the other, you can trade that trend. Just watch when you get to the middle that you don't enter into it because it can act as support and resistance and turn back up on you and stop you out. So you just got to be careful. The better trades are always going to be selling off resistance and buying off support. Anything else in the middle is probably a little more suspect. Unless you got a real strong trend, like this one right here, it's just working higher and higher and higher until you get a break and move to a new high, and then we're got a pretty strong trend down. So if you find a setup in here, you could take it, but I don't see any. You just have to be real conservative on these range days because you can get whipsawed in a blink of an eye. But anyway, there it is. I'm not going to beat around the bush today. I'm trying to get caught up and kind of back to normal around here, so I'm real close. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.